Hi.
Hi, Amy.
I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you.
Continuing our conversation from that Greenwich life that we had a few months ago.
Now I'm in the hot seat.
Here you go. I wanted to just I felt like we had so much more to discuss, and I feel like there's a lot of similar paths that we've taken career-wise, and I think we lived through like a crazy, crazy time when we came up as celebrity journalists.
Oh, we definitely did.
So for people who don't know, Dorothy and I both were the spokesperson for In Touch Weekly. We had various other jobs in that world, but we really were at kind of like the beginning of the celebrity weekly wars. So, for example, like Brittany and Justin, like you mentioned on the red carpet with like the matching denim.
Iconic moment.
Iconic. The Tiger Woods story. Brittany, with the umbrella, like terrible things that would happen to people, but then we would be called in to talk about all the breaking news. So
That's right.
I would love if you could take us back to that time and just explain to people what that was.
So, looking back now, so many years later, it is so surreal to think about what I did for a living in my 20s. And it was fun. I mean, it was probably a little bit shallow, but certainly it entertained people, and I was definitely a born entertainer. So, in one sense, I think I was doing at that time what I was called to do. So, I interned for People magazine when I was in college. I went to school in DC, and I got my big break when I covered the White House Correspondents' Dinner as a senior in college. And I interviewed Jerry Springer, he was there, and John Corbett, Aiden from Sex and the City. He wasn't very friendly, actually. That's like my one story I always tell about a celebrity that wasn't all that friendly. But he was there at the time with his girlfriend at the time, Bo Derek. I don't know if they're still together.
They're married.
They are married. Okay. See,
Wow.
that's how far away I am now from celebrity news, right? I don't even know. But that was a really big event that I covered. I thought I was just going to be as an intern making copies and grabbing coffee for editors. And I was out at events around DC interviewing one-on-one Kirstie Alley, interviewing one-on-one Fran Drescher. And I hadn't even graduated from college yet. And so after I graduated, People magazine was trying to figure out, there are these new magazines that are coming up, In Touch Weekly, Life and Style, Us Weekly. People didn't even know if it was called Us Weekly or US Weekly. That's how kind of new that whole industry was. And so I started at a newspaper in Philadelphia in a full-time job as a feature writer, and they eventually gave me my own column. And that was kind of my day job. And then I was rushing out of the office, throwing on my stilettos, driving to the Trenton, New Jersey train station, hopping on a train to New York City, and then showing up at places like Marquee and Lotus at all the red carpet events and interviewing Jessica Simpson and hanging out with Jay-Z and all these people. And then I would hop that train right back at 3:45 in the morning, get home, file my story, shower quickly, and I'm back at my desk as the daily newspaper girl. It was a crazy time.
It was crazy, but what I love about this and what I've loved about talking with, women who've come up during the same era, the work ethic that we had was unparalleled. And because there was no option to work from home, there was no internet, Nope. There really wasn't cell phones, maybe kind of like a flip phone, but nothing that we have now. That's how we worked and lived.
That's right.
And you had to grind.
You had to grind. And I think in some ways, because the job was so special and so unique, I think it didn't feel like work a lot to me. And that helped because I was working 5 days a week at a daily newspaper, churning out stories. Like Nelly Furtado came to town to perform and I interviewed her. But then the other story that I would write would be about a man who passed away from ALS and this charity that worked to donate all of his old equipment, his wheelchair, things like that. So I was doing that type of thing. And then I was like country mouse, city mouse, country mouse in a way, in the suburbs of Philly. And then I was up in New York City. And I was there for so many unbelievable moments. when Lindsay Lohan and Wilder Valderrama hooked up. I broke that story for People magazine. I was there at Marquee. They kissed right in front of me. A lot of really sad stories when Heath Ledger died. I was one of the first people on the scene at his building in Soho. And, when Whitney Houston died, I was in my apartment. At that point, I had already moved to New York, and I was working in celebrity magazines, and I worked for Life and Style. I was their online editor. And, Fox News Channel was blowing up my phone when I was in the shower getting ready to go out on a Saturday night. Like, where are you? Like, we need you. Because that's when they did a ton of celebrity news. And I went on the 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock show. I think it was Judge Jeanine Pirro's show. And I just sat there while this story was developing. And then at 9, the executive producer of the show that was airing from 9 to 10 came out from the control room and said, "Hey, you were great. Can you stay for another hour on live TV?" And I said, "Sure." And then the same thing happened from 10 to 11. So I sat for 3 hours and just talked about this developing story live.
So that's what I don't think that the generation that consumes media understands, right? So the influencers that we know today, I don't want to say we were the first influencers.
No, we were the first influencers.
Okay, you said it,
Sorry.
not me.
I always say, it's not to toot my own horn, it is just a fact. I am the OG influencer, like not the only one, but I am an OG influencer. I'm in that group of people because, and you are too, because we were going around on all of these TV shows talking about the coolest new skincare product and the greatest new cocktail to drink. And that's what we did.
Right. And so that was the medium in which we talked about things that were cool, happening, the news of the day. So being the OG influencers, right? And you said it perfectly. We were the ones who were curating the hottest, the coolest, and we were out and about. Right. So that was our medium. And I think being at the forefront of pop culture with that work ethic has allowed us to pivot as the world and technology has pivoted.
Yes.
So I know that you've had to do that, but we've also had to constantly reinvent ourselves. So
that's exactly right.
Walk me through that, how that was for you.
I think my reinvention actually started probably around the time that I was working for In Touch Weekly. That was the last celebrity magazine that I worked for, and the fourth and last. So People magazine, Life and Style Weekly. Then I did all the TV for the National Enquirer and did red carpets and gave the National Enquirer access to celebrities that would never in a million years talk to anybody from the National Enquirer, but they would talk to me because they knew me and their publicists knew me. And then I went to In Touch and did all their TV. And at that point, I think I started to see that even though the celebrity news world was just kind of birthed when I started, at that point it was kind of becoming oversaturated. And there were lots of new websites that had popped up. A little website called TMZ, and the space got very crowded. And magazines, I felt, were scrambling to figure out how to monetize what they were doing in that space. And so I started to think, well, I have all these brand relationships, and I'm seeing these women go on places like the Today Show, standing in front of a table of 5 different products and talking about them. I could do that. And so I launched my own production company. And I walked away really at that point from celebrity news. I was still a celebrity lifestyle expert, but I started producing and hosting ground media tours and satellite media tours, SMTs. And I think that was the way that I started to realize, yes, I have a journalism degree. Yes, I have a background in newspapers and magazines, but I don't have to be held to that. I can take all the skills that I learned and all the experience that I have appearing on shows like Chelsea Lately and E! News and the Today Show talking about the latest celebrity breakup and Jennifer Lopez giving birth to her twins and her photo shoot and things like that. I can take all those skills and I can move them into a more lucrative business and into a new thing that was coming about, which was SponCon, sponsored content. And so that's what I did. And I would appear on the morning show in Phoenix as the celebrity lifestyle expert from New York City, sharing with us the top 5 ways to make mom feel like an A-lister for Mother's Day. And I had all my clients on the table. I had Godiva chocolate, and I had, maybe not for the Mother's Day segment, but maybe Patron tequila. And I had all of those things to talk about, and all of those brands wanted to hire me to do that as their trusted spokesperson, in the same way that now they reach out to me, and they also reach out to what we know as now Instagram influencers who have 500,000 followers, 1 million followers. It was kind of the advent of that.
Right. So that's why when I say like being an OG influencer, our generation of media people laid the groundwork, the innovators, the people who could pivot, laid the groundwork for what you're seeing on social, because basically all you're talking about is branded content,
yes.
right? And sponsors and people who hire you to promote a product.
Yes.
But our engine were the networks.
Yes.
And now the engine is Instagram and TikTok and everything else.
That's exactly right.
So being that way, but also something you mentioned, which I think is really important. I've always talked to people who say, I want to be in media, I want to be a journalist, I want to be a producer. I said, you need to understand how to monetize your skill. Because if you think by going along the pathway of I'm going to be a producer and wind up an exec producer at the Today Show or whatever, or you're going to be on air and you're suddenly going to be, Barbara Walters or Katie Couric, that is not how the industry works anymore. You have to actually become an entrepreneur.
That's right.
And so learning how to monetize and learning the business of media is really what you've done.
That's exactly right. Because having my journalism degree and then having my journalism experience, it wasn't really enough to go places in my career that I knew I wanted to go and needed to go. And it certainly wasn't enough to make it lucrative. And really, I think combining my business sense, because I was going to say business background, but I don't have an MBA. I didn't really own any businesses before then. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to go around my neighborhood and pick my neighbors' flowers and then knock on their door and sell them to them. So I guess I do have some business background. Wow. And it was a big joke in my neighborhood. I used to have dog shows, even though I never had a dog as a pet. And I used to charge my neighbors to enter the dog show and then go over to the grocery store and buy a couple dog treats, and those were the prizes. So I always kind of had this savvy business sense, and I had to find a way to marry that with my experience going on TV, getting on a microphone, sharing the latest news, sharing the latest products with people. And that's really what I did through my production company, which then I ended up developing my own TV show, Celebrity Corner, which aired in the New York market, which is #1, and the Philly market, which is #4, for 2 seasons. I had 24 episodes and I had a staff of about 20 people. And I brought in all of the sponsors for that show, like Zoya nail polish, Pop Chips. And that was a very lucrative endeavor because I combined not only my ability to be creative in front of a camera and to create a show and produce a show and to create the content, but also my ability to leverage that creativity and sell that concept to brands. And the brands wanted to back me, and that still is what goes on with my podcast and with brands. They want to get behind me.
But that is a testament, first of all, that I think you were born to do this because you're telling me about your neighborhood, right? So that's who you are. And all the people who are sitting down with me, I really do like to talk about where they started, going back to being a kid, because they're clues, right? They're
Yes.
clues about who you are from the beginning, from the jump. But the fact that you were grinding in Philadelphia and then taking trains back and forth to Marquee and hanging out with the Kardashians and Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan in these clubs and then getting back on the train and doing your work, that is a work ethic that will propel you throughout all the stages in your life. And look at what you've done up into the part we are in the story, right? So you also were laying down the foundation for your business. So that brings us to, you want to get married and have a family. Mm-hmm. So how does that play into the decisions you then made for yourself?
So getting married, I think, was the easy part. That fit perfectly into my life. My now husband and I lived together in the city, in the West Village. He was always very supportive of my career. We bought a place together while we were engaged in Greenwich Village. And once we got married, really not much changed there. In fact, I would say that getting married it kind of even helped my career, because at the time I was wrapping up the first season of my show, Celebrity Corner, and the viewers were so excited about all the wedding content that was, to come, and the honeymoon. And I was just getting into travel writing at that time, and I was able to leverage that. And we took the most unbelievable honeymoon in South Africa. We went to 2 different places. We also went to Benguela Island in Mozambique. And I leveraged that travel writing to stay at 5-star lodges and resorts that we could definitely not afford back then. But it's all about the leveraging, So getting married, that was the easy part. Once I got pregnant with my son, Nicholas, who's now 9, that started to get my wheels turning. Like, what am I doing about my career? What am I doing next? And it didn't really slow me down initially. At that time, I had wrapped my show, Celebrity Corner. It was just too much to continue with a 3rd season with having a baby and things like that. But I was still doing a lot of satellite media tours and ground media tours. And once he was born, actually right before he was born, when I went on my maternity leave, which I put it in quotes because I was in business for myself, so I had to decide how I was going to position my maternity leave. I did a segment for Bacardi, and it was a beach segment. It was all about summertime entertaining. And I had this huge stomach. And I remember I just put the beach ball right on the table in the middle in front of my stomach. Not that I was hiding being pregnant or anything like that. I mean, maybe in a segment for Bacardi rum, maybe a pregnant woman talking about it is not the right message. But I was kind of clever with how I did things. And then the very last media tour that I did before I gave birth to him, about 3 weeks prior, I was really pregnant, and it was a Halloween segment. So I had the pumpkin right on the table. So I was clever. But once he was born, the first year that he was born, I decided to continue doing the media tours, but definitely not getting on an airplane and flying around anywhere. I remember in my first trimester, I was having the worst morning sickness with him. And I was on a plane, like going to, I forget where I was, Birmingham, Alabama or something, to do a segment. And then from there, I flew to Naples, Florida to do a segment. And I had like a horrible bronchitis or something, but I couldn't take any medication because I was pregnant. And I just kind of powered through. But once he was born, I still ended up doing, from birth to age 1, which is when we moved to Greenwich, I still did about 35 segments that year, but I was strategic. I split them up into 2 single studio days, and I hired an assistant. And my assistant did a lot of the legwork and all of the things that I was doing, all the deals I was making with the brands. I was just doing it when he was napping or maybe when he was playing. I was just fitting it in. I didn't have a nanny. I didn't even have a regular babysitter. And I still ended up doing big tours with big brands. And that kind of brings us to when he turned 1 and we moved to Greenwich. And that's when I said, okay, I did a lot. I did more than I could have ever dreamed of. Sure, there are more dreams to have, but it's time to take a pause. I want to be with my son. I want to be a mom, or as people say, just a mom, which is a silly thing to say because it is a huge job. So that's when I took a break.
I think it's hard for, I think it's hard for women who have been ambitious their whole lives to understand, and I've talked about this, a lot of women understand that in order to have a family and to have the other parts of your life that are going to make you happy and fulfill you, you cannot grind at that level, especially the way it was set up during that time.
Right.
We didn't have all these things now, right?
Right.
So that must have been really hard for you.
It was and it wasn't. It was hard because I was living in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I didn't really know anybody. And my son was 1, and he actually side note, got really sick with RSV about a month after we moved here and was hospitalized. And that was such a traumatic thing to go through as a mom. And my husband was still commuting into the city every single day, going on the train back in New York City. And there was part of me that was envious of that, even though I decided with him that we were going to move to the suburbs. But the thing that I think made it less hard is the fact that I was so burnt out. I was just tired. I was tired. And I also think, that was kind of like the negative thing that made it easier. And I think the positive thing that made it easier was that I spent so much of my career being so critical of myself and watching a segment where I'm on the round table of Chelsea Lately, being introduced by Chelsea Handler. Like I flew out to LA to do that, and I'm watching the segment and I don't like the way that my hair looks, or I stuttered at one point, or I might have used the word like, or I should have said this. And I really, at that time in my career, I was really nitpicky about myself and very much a perfectionist. And I got to the point around the time that we moved to Greenwich when my son was 1, that I realized, you know what, girl? You did good. You did good. You executive produced and hosted your own talk show. Look at your body of work from being on TV. Yeah, you're not the next Katie Couric, but you know what? I felt satisfied. I got to a point of contentment and satisfaction and being able to feel proud of myself. And that's what I think also allowed me to pull back and slow down.
Oh God, I have the chills. That's such a, thank you.
Of course.
It's such a good message because I think as women who grind and who came up during that time, we were taught to girl boss so hard, yes. Right? It was the message you can have it all. You can be it all. You have to keep grinding and work harder, work harder, work harder.
Say yes to everything.
Everything. Be polite to everyone. Just that guy's sexually harassing you. Who cares? They're not paying you. Who cares? You had to just accept all the things. So when you say that you were so burnt out, the level of burnt out, you can't explain it unless you've actually lived it.
That's
and
right.
I understand it. And also the fact that your husband got to go on the train and go be back in that world and then come back into this world, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And so I think for women, especially this next generation, it's so important, at least for me, to be able to talk to other women about, it's not about the girl boss.
That's right.
You need to have in order to have everything, you cannot be just girl bossing because then you're only going to have one thing in your life.
That's right.
And I think you're a testament to understanding this is amazing what I have. And by the way, I'm awesome.
Yes.
And you went through the self-critical. And listen, that never ends. It just doesn't
That's
as women. Right. But I'm proud of you for being able to say I'm proud of myself.
I'm proud of me too, because I think I spent so much of my life trying to be someone or trying to be seen. And I think at that point, it was probably the first time ever, and I didn't know it then, but I know it now, that I was able to say both things can be true. I can be a girl boss, and I am a girl boss, and I can also do what feels right for me right now, which is taking a step back from my career. And it doesn't make me any less successful. It doesn't mean that I sold out or that I quit or that I backed down or anything like that. It actually means that I stood up, and it means that I leaned in to the season of life that I was in. And I think also emotionally, it was a huge adjustment having a baby and then taking care of the baby. And even though I wanted to do it and I wanted for that to be my primary job, and it still holds true in present day, I knew that in order to be the mom that I wanted to be and in order to emotionally show up for him, I couldn't take on all of those things at once. That was its own job and its own challenge. And funny enough, once I moved to Greenwich and I started meeting a lot of people and there were these moms groups and things like that, I would go and women would talk about how I really need something for me. I really need something for myself. Like, I really want to, start a new business. Like, I love being home with my kid, but I really need to get back to work. I need to do all of these things. And one big period of growth for me was that I always sat there and I thought to myself, oh no, I can't chime in here. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm proud of what I did and I'm happy where I am. Like, I want to go to the playgrounds. I want to be able to use different parts of my brain now and take a break from that grind and that hustle and that constant just clamoring for the next big thing and the next big opportunity. I got to the point where I said, you know what? My show didn't air on ABC, but I still had my own show, and that's enough for me at this point.
See, that's such a good message because you did it, you like front loaded.
Yes.
Right? So I think with women, you're either front loading yourself with the career and then hopefully you can have a baby because biology doesn't keep up with that girl boss mantra. And that's something that I talk about a lot, right? Like they were like, do it. Oh, and by the way, then we'll just pump you with hormones and we hope you'll have a baby. And I know you went through this journey.
Oh, I know all about that.
And I'm going to get to that.
Yes.
So that was the decisions we made, but that was our messaging. And then on the back end, because you did that and you're in a room full of women who didn't front load
Correct.
it, you're able to say, I'm at peace with it. But then you have women in their late 30s, early 40s who are saying, I missed out on that. So I think that has been a mixed messaging and a disservice to women through the feminism wave that we lived through. I truly believe that the feminism wave that we were programmed to has made a whole generation of women completely turned around.
That's right. That is an excellent, excellent point, Amy, because you're right. There were the women like us who were just grinding and, never even slept more than 4 hours a night, out every night, heels on, lipstick on, out. And then the women who didn't do that. And then once they had kids, they realized, wait a second. But I do think that something great has come from that. I think the women who ended up then moving into motherhood and realizing I missed out on that, or I wish I would have done more, those women in their second act are the ones that are launching these unbelievable businesses and becoming these magnetic businesswomen because they're in a place in their life where they're just motivated and ready to do that in a different way and wise in a different way than maybe they were in their earlier years before they became a mom and had kids.
Okay, so Mimi, who's sitting behind the monitor, I made her. I met her when she was 23, COVID hit. She's like, my boyfriend wants me to move home. I don't know if I should leave New York City. I said, you're leaving New York City and you're going to get engaged and you're going to have kids before you're 31. So she got engaged. Her wedding's this summer because I'm like, you need to have kids early. You need to have kids because a lot, and I'm a little bit older than you, but a lot of people in my graduating class, right. We didn't have kids because we got programmed wrong.
Yes.
And so they were like, you can, oh, and by the way, you're 35, so it's fine. We're going to try and pump you with hormones. Oh, wait, who are you marrying? And like, it was a very strange time for women. So I believe that the best way for a woman, this new feminism that I think that needs to be written is women need to get married earlier. They need to have babies earlier. And because of the rise of platforms, podcasts, technology, women have more opportunities to start their career however they want because they don't have to do what we did.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly true. Later in life, women can do anything. It's almost like the feminist movement. The feminist movement. It's almost like now it's like a more gentle feminist movement where we need to be more gentle with ourselves and we need to be more patient with ourselves. And we need to, I think, sometimes just allow life to unfold how it would. Because let me tell you, back then when I was with Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel at Marquee, for a Halloween party, I was not ever thinking, I'm gonna have kids. or I want to have kids. I was always thinking, you know what? I'm going to get married later. Maybe I'll have kids. I don't know if I even want to have kids. I'm not sure. And it wasn't something until like really kind of later when I met my husband that it evolved. And even when I got pregnant with my son, Nicholas, I was very, very lucky to get pregnant so quickly with him, which I knew at the time I was very lucky, but later in life I would discover just how truly lucky I was. That was a scary time for me because it meant that I had to give up a lot. It meant that I had to change a lot about my life. And I'm glad that I did. I was 36 when I had him, 35 or 36. So it was later. But I don't know if there's any real direct path or formula. I think that women need to listen to their intuition and they need to follow their intuition, not what everybody else around them is saying. They need to follow their intuition and decide what's right for them. A woman who decided not to live in New York City and to get married when she was 22, let me think if I know anybody who is still married to the person they married when they're 22. I'm sure that I do. But, like, that's not, I don't think, right or wrong. It's just that's their path.
Right.
Like, they had kids early, like a lot of my high school friends. They stayed in Philly. They had kids early. Their kids could babysit my kids at this point. That was their path. Their career was different than mine, too. So.
Yes, I agree. It's everyone's path. I think my issue is coming at this point in my life is that I think that, and sitting with women like you and, women who've really done things early on, is that we kind of were expected to be these like Joan of Arc, go get 'em women from an early age because our mothers were raised like in the Gloria Steinem era. Mm-hmm. They were like, you guys can do anything.
Yes, that's correct.
Right?
And it's a blessing and a curse.
Because we could, but I think the biology aspect of it comes into play, which then leads me to, I know you have like the most heartbreaking but beautiful story about your second child and how hard that was for you.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you can go into that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about it a lot and I'm open about it a lot now. When I was going through it, I was a total turtle. I was a shell of myself. I've had a voice my whole life and I really lost that voice during that time. This particular event or series of events, because really it was a period of time in my life, completely changed my life. It changed me as a person. It rewrote me as a person. I knew that I didn't want my kids super close in age, Irish twins. I knew that I couldn't handle it. It just would be so much. I don't know how people have twins or have kids like back to back. And so around the time that my son was 3.5 years old, I got pregnant with my second son. And we were really excited about it. And everything was going great, and my son was so excited, and he ran into school, his preschool, to tell his teachers and his friends, like, my baby brother is coming and all these things. And then at my 20-week anatomy scan, while he was actually there with us watching Daniel Tiger on my husband's phone, because we wanted him to be part of the moment and the experience, the scan went fine until the very end. And our son was really, really sick. And he had certain things anatomically that were just unfixable. And it was a situation where you never think it's going to happen to you. You just never think you're going to be in that spot. And we saw the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Columbia, and I was like, like this baby, like, I remember driving there, like, they called me and I dropped everything because the chief agreed to see us. And I'm like, this baby chose the right mother because I am going to know everything and I am going to fix this. And like, we are going to sort this out and life is not going to be what we thought it was going to be, but we're going to do it. Like, I can do this. And I was also extremely devastated and crying nonstop. It wasn't just this like, rah, rah, I got this. And we went and found out that in fact, that wasn't going to be the case, that there were too many things. And we were guided by our doctors who we trusted that there was no other option for us but to terminate the pregnancy. And it's funny, like, how grief creeps up on you, because I talk about this a lot and I've talked about it so many times. But, you know, it's always going to be there because it was such a traumatic thing. And you think that, you know, you think that you're going to go through something like that and, you know, you're going to come out the other side stronger and you're going to heal and all of these things, and you're going to, you know, have another baby because all the doctors told us it was a thing happening and it had nothing to do with you and nothing to do with your husband, even though I was convinced, I mean, this is how traumatized I was convinced that I had been living all my life with this very, very rare syndrome, which I smile and I laugh because it's like, you know, looking back, like, that was literally insane. I never had any kind of a, you know, major thing, but you blame yourself, you shame yourself. You think about all the things you could have done to cause it. You could have think about all the things you could have done to prevent it. And it was a really, really bad time. It was a really bad time, but I had no idea how bad and how much worse it was going to get. That was only the appetizer of this ridiculously horrible thing that I was going to be served going forward. And I was treated for PTSD. I was in a deep depression. I knew that we did the only thing that we could do, but it didn't make it any easier. And it was very, very hard to tell my son. It was very hard to explain to him in some way that his baby brother was not coming. His grief, see, I can't believe I'm getting so emotional because I talk about it so much, but it's grief, and I'm okay with it. You know, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not embarrassed by it. The hardest part of my grief was seeing my son's grief and managing that for several years, and him asking about our baby Angel and when is our next baby coming and things like that. And then COVID came. I had been trying to get pregnant again because that was how I was programmed. It all goes back to what we're talking about with career. I was programmed to just grind. And, you know, if something doesn't work out, just like try again, just keep going, just do whatever it takes. And so there was a void. And if there was a void, I was going to fill it. And that was my coping mechanism. And that was the way I was programmed from when I was a kid. And that wasn't working. And nobody knew why. And I did all these tests, and my husband did all these tests, and nobody could identify why I got pregnant so easily with my son, and I got pregnant so easily with my second son, my Angel baby, and now, kitchen's closed. Can't get pregnant. And so COVID hit. I started doing IVF. I did an IUI. That didn't work. I am not going to bore you with the chronology of what then transpired, but I will tell you that in the course of 2.5 short years, I did 5 rounds of IVF, meaning 5 egg retrievals, which is like the transfers are the easy part. The retrievals are not. And I did several transfers. They worked. I was pregnant. And then I lost 1, 2, let me think. I can't even remember at this point because that was just the way that life was at that time. I was constantly on a day-to-day basis either shooting myself up with needles for the upcoming retrieval, recovering from a retrieval, shooting myself up with needles for an upcoming transfer, recovering from the transfer, every single second wondering, am I pregnant? like, did the transfer work? Am I going to get pregnant leading up to the transfer? Like 2 weeks later, did I take the pregnancy test? I am pregnant, then I'm not pregnant. There's a heartbeat, there's not a heartbeat. I had so many ultrasounds. I was under general anesthesia so many times. I always make the joke, which my husband says is like getting so tired, but I was literally under general anesthesia more times than Michael Jackson, because it was like a constant way of living, almost like having a chronic illness, which people don't understand. Infertility is like that. It's like having a chronic illness. You're at the doctor every other day, and it's unpredictable. You don't know when you need to be there or what needs to happen next. And it was so horrible. I mean, I was so unbelievably depressed. I block out so much of it now, but even to the point of one time looking at my chart, which I felt like the whole industry, I was treated like a lab rat. I was a walking, living, breathing science experiment. And, IVF is a great tool when it works. And when it doesn't work, nobody knows why, and nobody knows kind of what to do next. Just try different things. Well, those different things are not like, here, sip this, juice and see how it goes. Those different things are putting you under general anesthesia and, going in for like laparoscopic surgery or whatever, which I was very, very close to doing. Those different things are the most invasive things you could ever imagine doing as a woman, especially when it comes to a part of your body that is, it's not like your hand. It's not like you're trying to fix your hand. Like, it's a part of your body that is really the deepest part of yourself. And the deepest, it's your soul, and it's your deepest part of your femininity, like your womenness. And that part is constantly being manipulated and violently treated. At one point in the process, I was looking at the notes from the clinic that I was at. I was looking for something because another doctor was asking me a question, and I had to stop myself because it said, like, patient took whatever vial of the injection that it was that I was taking. Patient reports feelings of suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideations. And I'm sitting there looking at this like, oh my God, this is so bad. And it's the truth. I never ever would have done anything to compromise my living son's world. But there were so many days that I woke up and just thought to myself, like, I don't want to be here. I just don't want to be here anymore, because it's torture. Like, I had my baby taken from me. I have tried to have another baby. I, want more than anything to grow my family, and it just wasn't happening. I was doing everything. I was doing all the things that I thought I needed to do, like I'm white knuckling my way through this. And the reason that I am so grateful for this dark night of the soul that I experienced and this time in my life that I experienced is because it finally woke me up. It finally woke me up to the fact that I had been living my life for maybe ever on autopilot. And on the outside, I was this like happy, bubbly, successful woman with this perfect life and this perfect family. And like, I was a person that people wanted to aspire to be. And I was battling depression for a lot of those years living in the city and not sleeping and being out drinking and in the clubs and the nature of the work. It was kind of I wasn't doing any drugs or anything like that, but it was almost your textbook, like art imitates life, where I was becoming, in a way, the celebrities that I was covering. I was this train wreck behind the scenes. And I'm grateful that this all happened because little by little, the more that the experience just stomped me into the ground, into like absolute like nothingness, a shell of myself, not even a shell. I was less than a shell of myself. Then I eventually realized, okay, I have a lot of things I need to be healing and looking at. And I was always in therapy. I was always a very introspective person, but not like this. And at the same time, I realized that a lot of people in my life, I shouldn't say a lot, a handful of people in my life, but very, very key people in my life, ride or die people, even some falling under the umbrella of family, were not able to lean in during this time for me or my husband or our son. They weren't able to lean in. And in fact, I think it was difficult for them to see us in this way and to see the boundaries that I was putting up. And so they really made the situation harder for me. And it was a secondary trauma that was impactful. So I lost some really key people in my support system. I completely lost myself. I lost my baby at 21 weeks, and I lost all of these embryos that I worked so hard to get, and these pregnancies. I just kept losing more and more and more and more. But as I lost more, I started slowly gaining little pieces of myself. And I started doing a lot of things, meditation. I started getting more into yoga. I went on a grief retreat that was the most impactful thing that I've ever done. I was in EMDR therapy for PTSD. If you look back on my Instagram, you see a person that's dressed up and out at all of these Greenwich events and, you know, on a private plane, like flying back from Aspen and things like that, which, not my private plane, just for the record. But you look at this person and you're like, wait, she's okay. She's doing great. Because I learned during that time that you have to be able to hold both things in life. There has to be able to be joy and grief together. And that's what I focused on. I had a son. I had a son that I loved so much that I wanted to give the best life to while still going through all this grief. And I'm not kidding, Amy, this situation, it rewrote me as a person. It rewrote my nervous system. It made me return, which I didn't know that this is what it was. I thought it was a new me, but it made me return to the true person that I was born as. Before all the things made me somebody that wasn't really true to myself. And, you know, I say, like, now I walked away, like I'm a former celebrity gossip girl, but I walked away from all of that because now my purpose is greater than gossip.
I knew we were supposed to talk more.
I can't believe I got so emotional, but I can.
What do you mean?
Because it's grief. That's grief.
No, but...
And I'll always have it. It's a part of me. I've learned to embrace it. Like, I won't go home today now and say, oh, you know, the morning was ruined, or like the interview went sideways because, you know, I'm bawling. No, grief is my buddy. Grief is my friend.
What do you mean? This is an incredible, like, listen, the world in which we came up in, right? This, and you made me cry too. The world we came up in, that celebrity world, is toxic. It's materialistic. It's not true. We were feeding things. I remember being there and thinking, how do I make this story smart? How can I like literally give more information from a psychological point of view? But then I started to feel bad because I was really reporting on people's worst times.
Correct.
And so that's when I would sit in the green room with women and I'd say, I need to start Power Women TV. So that's really what made me start. But it's true. And that really goes back to, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And also, do you know how many women you're going to help by just telling that story? But I do want to, can you tell me then about your daughter?
What ends up happening? Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I went on this journey, and then, and I even got pregnant in the midst of all the IVF on my own. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is why the IVF didn't work. And that pregnancy was going great, and it was the one. And then this was it. This was, when you say rock bottom, this was my rock bottom. The night of my 40th birthday, Hurricane Ida came, flooded almost all of Greenwich, including my neighborhood. I lost years and years of things in my basement, pictures, everything from my childhood, everything that I had at my house. Canceled a party that I was supposed to have for 150 people for my 40th birthday in my backyard. Was going to Croatia in a couple weeks as a surprise for my husband. Finally, the travel writer has somebody else planning a trip for her. And I went into the doctor the day before we left for the trip, and everything was going great. My levels were all awesome. We had seen a great heartbeat, and you know where this is going. Went in, and there was no heartbeat. And that was the absolute rock bottom moment where I felt like I had been canceled as a person. Also had lots of things go on with my perceived support system through my 40th birthday, through the flood, through the miscarriage, through all the things. And I was like, this is it. I'm canceled. Matt Lauer, what happened to Matt Lauer? I felt like this is what these people feel like that get canceled. And that's when I started to really, really rebuild myself to a completely different person. And I did one last round of IVF later that spring, so it was September and then in March. And that one went sideways beyond sideways, worse than you could ever imagine something going. I didn't think it was going to end up turning into something great, but worse than you could have ever imagined. And I said, that's it. This is the end of the road. I am devastated. I have no idea how I'm gonna ever move forward, going through all that I have, trying to have a second baby for myself, for my husband, for my son, and this is how it's gonna end. And I'm a writer, so we like to kind of have a good ending at the end of the story too. But at that point I had to let go. I had to just be done with it and not know what's to come. And I said to my husband, we were on the beach in Greenwich, and I said to my husband, sorry, but it's over. And I'm not happy about it. And I was crying, and I said, I'm gonna have to process this. It's gonna take me years, but it's gonna have to be this way. And my husband was understanding, but he was still hopeful. We're still young. I said, young? I'm 41 at this point. You think, plus I am so traumatized by pregnancy. I've been pregnant now 4 pregnancies in 3 years, 2 years that didn't amount to a living, breathing baby in my arms. It's a pain that you can never understand. It's a pain as a woman you can never, ever, ever know. And I used to sit in the guest room in the rocking chair that was my son's, and I used to just sit in that rocking chair and cry and cry and cry. And I said the next morning after I had that conversation with my husband, today is day 1 of whatever this new life is of mine. And day 2, I said, today is day 2. And I was in so much therapy and I was doing tons of things. And I went up until day 23, I think, and got home from my friend's house after I had a couple, tequilas, and thought to myself, wait a second. I think, is my period late? What's going on? Well, guess what? I was pregnant. But guess what? I didn't care. In fact, I viewed it as a negative thing because what new fresh hell's around the corner? What's it gonna be now? And that pregnancy was crazy. It was scary. I had to treat myself almost as my own surrogate for much of the early parts of it, even up until the end.
Were you disassociating from yourself?
I was disassociating. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't unhealthy. I think it was just I said to my friends, okay, I'm gonna tell you something because you're never gonna see me at an event without a glass of wine in my hand or, a glass of tequila. But I said to my girls, I said, if you're my friend, you're going to listen to what I have to say, and you're not going to ask me about it again. Don't ask me about it. And I said, I'm pregnant, and that's all we're going to say. And that's really a lot of what it was. I had to be very different. I had to not be the Dorothy that wears her heart on her sleeve and tells everybody everything and a play-by-play of every single thing of my life. I had to be like that for so long because I needed that. I needed that to survive.
You were protecting, you were self-protecting.
Yes. At this point, I needed to be a version of myself that could sit alone with the discomfort and the fear and the grief. I needed to be able to sit alone with it and say, on my way to my next appointment, there's going to be a heartbeat or there's not, and I don't need to call somebody and have them reassure me. I have to reparent myself, and I have to be my best friend and advocate and cheerleader. And I have to talk to myself in a way that supports me. And that's what I did. And my husband, of course, beyond most amazing support system. I mean, the fact that we're not divorced after all of that happened, and we both come from divorced families, the fact that we're not divorced is such a miracle in and of itself. But we worked really hard. We worked really hard, and there were lots and lots of times that I thought to myself, like, as much as I wanted to walk away from life, like, I definitely wanted to walk away from my marriage. Because you go through things like that as a woman in a way that the most sensitive guy, which my husband is a great man, I would not describe him as the most sensitive guy, but they can't know. They can't know what you're going through. And so right up until the day that my daughter was born, I remember, like, a week before she was born, I was doing the live auction at my son's school, and I was super pregnant, like on the stage in heels, like, you know, auctioning off principal for the day for, you know, $4,000 or whatever. It's Greenwich after all. And it's public school, by the way. But the next morning I went to the hospital and I begged my OB, like, please, like, today, please have the C-section be today. It wasn't scheduled for another week. And I begged him, and I cried and cried and cried. Like, I can't lose this baby, like this late in the game. Like, this baby has to be born. There cannot be any more babies taken from me. And he was just like, no, I'm not doing it. You're only 37 weeks. Your pregnancy looks good. You look good. Everything looks good. It would be irresponsible of me to do this. And the following Saturday, 1 week later, I went in and I said to my mother-in-law, I said, I'm getting so emotional, but I said to my mother-in-law, who was there with my son, like, you know, the C-section is scheduled for this time. It probably would be safe for you to come, like, around, you know, by 10:30 a.m., but don't leave the house until my husband calls you and tells you that everything is okay and that she was born. Because I don't want to drag my son through anything more. And that's what she did. And my daughter was born, and it was like the most amazing moment. Like, people said to me before she was born, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your last couple weeks of freedom, you know? And I said, my freedom doesn't start until I hear her cry and hold her. Because I've been living in this prison and this nightmare, like this, like, Guantanamo Bay of sorts for so long now. And my freedom will start when I see that girl born. And I know that she's okay. And she is. She's better than okay. She just turned 2 years old. I cannot believe how many people have sent me messages, and I don't even know what my makeup looks like at this point, but I don't know how, I really can't believe how many people have reached out to me and sent me messages through my podcast and my Instagram and all of the advocacy that I do for infertility and IVF and pregnancy loss and PTSD and all of these things. I know 100% that all of that, as painful as it was, like, it all happened for me. I'm not bitter about it. I'm not even bitter towards the people and the relationships that I lost. I gained so much. I gained more than anything, and that's what tragedy does to you. If you work hard and if you allow it, which I worked really, really hard. So that's my whole mission now, you know, like we all have our hard. Your hard is not the same as mine, but we all have something that is complete and utter devastation in our lives. And if we're just a little bit more open with one another and a little bit more vulnerable, we can not only heal ourselves, but we can heal each other. We can heal the world.
It's every person who's sat in this chair, most people are like light workers. And I don't know if it's the people that like I instinctively am drawn to.
It is, because you are too. You are too. And there's that very organic connection there.
But I was like, I need to have her back on. And I didn't know this is where the interview was going to go.
I didn't either.
I was like, yeah, I want to talk about like our media world. But this was a message that you had to get out. And also it's so, I mean, listen, this could be a 10-parter, but grief, trauma, the beginning themes that we talked about of the grind. That's like really, you have your mission. One of my missions is like, I really want to like stop the grind.
Yes.
I want to like stop the messaging for girls, like just push through it. It's not about pushing through it. And
Yes.
like, this is what can happen. Listen, you got your daughter, you had to go through that to evolve into the person you always were.
That's right.
That's what it is. It had to return you to self.
That's right.
It returned you to self. But the trauma in which we have to go through to return to self is devastating. And I'm not saying it's our generation, but I do think there's a special element that happened during our season that messaged us in a way that was like not healthy.
Mm-hmm. That's 100% right. And I saw that I was doing the same thing with trying to get pregnant and IVF that I was doing back in the day, that I had always been doing. I never stopped doing it. Even when I stopped working, I was doing it as a mom. I was like, on top of everything. I knew exactly what food to give him. I knew I was the one that all the moms came to for all of the advice. Like, you don't have to go balls to the wall with everything that you do. You can actually find space and time for rest and for resetting. And that is something so valuable that I learned. And life is busier than ever right now. But like I try where I can. I think also I was just at this unbelievable retreat and event in the Hamptons with Lydia Finette, who is a celebrity auctioneer, and she's such a powerhouse. And she talked about like an artificial timeline, and I never heard it. It's such a simple phrase. I never really heard it talked about like that, but artificial timeline. We have so many artificial timelines in our mind about how we want things to go. Meeting the right guy, having a baby, like our career, buying a home, whatever it might be. And going through IVF and trying to have my daughter, which at the time I didn't know was gonna be a girl, but you have to let go of those artificial timelines. Like you have to just allow, you have to stay open and allow, and the universe will literally provide every single thing that you want, as long as you stay open and allow, and you don't keep clawing forward and white knuckling and pushing yourself like way past the brink of anything that's healthy for you. And it really wasn't until I really made that connection. Like people would say it, but I really, really needed to know it and be it in my own heart and soul, that then the universe delivered.